SICKOS, Rich Fan, SICKOS. Tony Khan books for SICKOS. And it has been it stirred conversation the last couple of days. I put up a story on it. The headline, Tony Khan says he books for SICKOS. And I just said factually it's drawing mixed response on social media with some people going, I'm a sicko, you're booking for me. That's why I love AEW. And other people going, you're doing way too much of that stuff. And that's why I don't like your product, paraphrasing. And then Tony Khan, so here's the original tweet for people. I book wrestling for the sickles because that's what I am and that's who I care about. And then up next, he responds to me going, it's just paraphrasing Tommy Boy Wade. Well, I let my barking dog in, who decided to just jump right in with wanting to come in right after we pushed record here. And I don't want to start over. I'm going to give you full screen access to correct the record, either me or Tony or everybody on Twitter. What is this a reference to? And what do you think of the response? And I'll be back in just a moment.
Sure. So, with me jumping in, hey y'all, it's good to see you. I think one of the first things when you look at anything in this wide world of Twitter is just being okay with sometimes there are multiple truths. And in the case of this one, I think the multiple truth is that, as you see on the screen, for those of you who have the benefits of it, and I don't have the ability to put that on the screen, so I'm going to leave that alone. Tony mentions the Tommy Boy line, which is I make car parts for the American working man because that's who I am and that's who I care about, and adapted it to sickos. I think both can be true. But for those folks who have not watched Tommy Boy closely and missed that commercial, and I had a picture, but I don't have editor access, so I have a delightful picture of Dan Aykroyd. Someone found him in a store and he had one of the hats on, and so it's just he's one of my favorite Saturday Night Live people, staying in character when you're talking about a subject. He did it with the Blues Brothers. He did it for the random person who wanted to imitate Tommy Boy. In this case, Sickos is also the onion meme, so it's like you got memes colliding, and that's the last thing I thought I'd be talking about on a Tuesday, but alas I am. And so it's led to what Twitter typically does. Folks saw that reply. I got off of work. I opened my Twitter. I'm like, why is the Torch feed getting all these random? And then I look, there you go. Outstanding, Wade. And I love Dan Aykroyd with the salt and pepper. He's just he looks like Rich Eisen. Now that I look at that, that's uncanny. I really feel like it's fine.
Yeah.
Folks are gonna take this as Tony owned the dirt sheets again and go King and all this other stuff.
So let's build a foundation more than we give attention to randos on Twitter, which, by the way, I didn't even know that they were talking about this days after I ran the story, because that's how little I'm on Twitter looking at responses. All I did is pull the initial responses when he first posted it and quoted them. So I'm not quite sure how anyone was owned. I was acknowledging that Tony posted, he books for sickos, which was quoting him. And then I said, here's what people are saying on Twitter. The fact that Tony says he's referring to a movie adds context, but it's not owning anything, because what I wrote is factually true. And what Tony added afterwards added additional context that was not self-apparent unless you remember this movie. So we still have the meme on the screen. And for people who are listening to us just in audio, it's a quote of Dan Aykroyd saying, I make car parts for the American working man because that's what I am. That is combined with a meme, Rich, you sent me, which is, I'm putting on the screen, which says, it's a guy looking through a window with a t-shirt that says Sickos. And he goes, yes, ha, 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 yes. So Tony puts up a tweet. And as I mentioned this with Jason Powell on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast flagship, which is going up tonight, Tuesday night, June 11th. Also, if you say something and you're quoting a movie, or what did Tony say? He's paraphrasing a movie. Then, and people don't know, like I didn't know what the reference was for, but a lot of people are like, yes, that is who I am, a sicko, and you're booking for me. Like, that says something about you, no matter what you meant. A big part of the AEW fan base, clearly from the response on social media when he first posted that, were like, I'm a sicko and I love that you are unapologetically booking for me. If you say, I'm the most dishonest man on the planet, and you're quoting a movie and you're trying to be ironic or something, people go, oh yeah, okay, he's self-aware. Like that, you might have meant it just as a fun little reference to a movie, but if people think you're paraphrasing as something actually applies to you, you're owning yourself. And I would argue that kind of happened here. If what Tony is saying is a pushback on people going, I'm a sicko. AEW's for sickos. Oh, I did put in the story, during contract TV negotiations. Is it really booking to a broad audience if you're saying that you're booking for sickos? So I will say I did add that beyond just the Twitter quotes. So to me, I'm like, you got to think about how that's going to come across, how many people are going to get it. Obviously, tons of people on Twitter, Rich, thought that he's talking about me, and he doesn't care about. I think some people looked at that as saying, I don't care about growing my audience. I am just booking for this slice of the audience that I'm going to super serve, and they're sickos. That word isn't even uttered in the Tommy Boy movie, Rich. It's just Tony Khan combining a couple things and paraphrasing. So, your response to that?
Yeah, because it's the Onion. Like I said before, while you were taking care of doggy business, it's an Onion cartoon from a couple of years ago, and so it's a merger of the two. I don't think it's a big deal, but as with
No.
anything on social media, it becomes a big deal because
Oh,
folks
only if
want
you're
to
on
see it
social
as
media.
points. And you just lived through the best example of this.
Yeah.
It's like a tree falling in a forest, only the internet version. If people think they owned you on Twitter and you don't look on Twitter to see it, were you
Yes.
owned?
Yep. Not one person brought it up to me. Not a single person texted or DM'd or anything. And it was just I didn't know Tony Khan quote tweeted me or responded to it.
Oh no, he didn't quote tweet. He just replied.
Yeah.
Just
I
to
didn't.
make
Yeah.
sure.
Sorry, my term was incorrect. And good to
Yeah.
clarify. But yeah, I didn't know he even replied. I mean, when we put up an article, we often just put a alert up on Twitter and with a headline, and that's what I did. I stand by the comment, which is, should Tony Khan, if he said, "Hey, I'm going to post this tweet," would your response be, "Yes, do that," or "I don't think people are going to know what you're talking about"? And geez, if you're negotiating with TV networks, they might not know that either and wonder, wait, do we want to? Is this a company we want to invest in when the head of the company and the booker and the guy who sets the tone is saying it's a product for sickos, which rings true for people who watch the product. Anarchy in the Arena. I mean, you got to be a bit of a sicko to get off on seeing Jack Perry set on fire. John Moxley does crazy stuff. He'd wear a sicko t-shirt probably with pride. It's not even a negative or a positive. And in my news stories, I don't editorialize. I present questions. I posit questions for people to consider the ramifications. And that's what I did there. And I asked the question, does being a product aimed at sickos give AEW more of an identity that differentiates it in the marketplace, or does it limit their appeal? So we can get into, was it advisable first, Rich? But I want to get into, is it actually, are people who are mocking Tony actually missing the point? Todd Martin. Hi, Todd. Todd Gordon, who launched ECW, said originally he wanted the motto of ECW to be "not for everyone." I mean, it's somewhat different than we book for sickos, but the effect is the same. We're booking to a narrow audience. We're super serving a more narrow audience to be the alternative, or as Tony would say, a challenger brand. And Paul Heyman didn't like that, and he pushed to change it. But I got Todd Gordon and why he was doing it. It's not. Am I right, Rich? It was not for everyone, right? It was something very similar to that. I think that was it.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. You're right.
Yep. So that's how I took Tony's tweet. He's like, "Hey, we're super serving an audience and they're sickos, and we're going to own that term. It's a term of endearment." And the fact that it wasn't something Aykroyd said, he obviously Tony saw it as a term of endearment.
Yeah. And it's one of those, again, challenger brand thoughts of how do you separate yourself from the hegemon? How do you keep yourself away from the big bad? And in this case, it's we're wrestling for the sickos. We're the best wrestle, highlighting all these different things that AEW does differently. It's very similar. Again, we've talked about this in the past to Sega Genesis with Nintendo in the late 80s, early 90s with the Genesis can't do this on Nintendo. So most of the time you don't actively want to try to punch your opponent in the face by way of advertisement, but he's leaning into it. And that sort of brashness is going to be something that, I guess, given what's going on in Warner Media overall, that's the least of their worries. When you have one of your luminaries in sports broadcasting weekly going on different shows saying, I don't know if I'm going to have a job because my bosses are idiots, like Charles Barkley has been doing across like hockey, basketball, baseball, tennis. He's at Roland Garros talking in French.
Yeah. Well, so some of the initial tweets when this came out was, and we love you for it, never change. Could you do, someone says, could you do a better job of it? Someone says Prawley. I love that. Prawley might be why there's not significant growth, but as a sicko myself, I love it. This audience of one is happy. I mean, there's fans just embracing going, yeah, I don't care if you grow or you reach the biggest audience, just make me happy. And I mean, that's fine for a fan to feel that way. Someone else said, saying I only care about appealing to my hardcore fans, even when my ratings and attendance numbers are dropping, is a weird thing to say in the middle of TV rights negotiations. Anyway, I'm a sicko. Give me a Mystico Sammy Guevara next Wednesday and make it mask versus hair. So there's literally people going, what you're doing is a weird thing to say in the midst of TV negotiations, but thank you, I'm a sicko. Like, I mean, and I was thinking Tony's getting probably the response he wanted. I mean, someone who says, could you do a better job of it? Or it's probably why you can only get 800,000 viewers on your flagship show is not what he's looking for, but it is the obvious result of the product he puts out. And saying he books for sickos is, to me, it was a sign of self-awareness that, yeah, it's not as mainstream as WWE. And they're not
Yeah.
aiming to be. Yeah.
And I think there's a pride with it. It isn't
Yeah.
hiding and saying, "Oh man, I can't believe we can't catch up with these guys." It's like, no, we don't want to catch up with them. Here's
Yep.
who we are. Here's who our fans and our customers want. And kick rocks if you think different. And there's room for that. Again, with the television rights and all that coming up, maybe not the best time, but
Yeah.
he must feel confident that he has the support of Zaslav and the Warner family, and so you
Did
know, lean
Do
into
we
it.
know what prompted him to say that? Has he said that, or is it apparent? What kind of was the impetus for him just going on and saying that?
I think he started saying it after a couple of the matches. His first time saying it was for a couple of matches on, I want to say, Collision,
Yeah, it
and
was.
that
Yeah.
led to like, hey, I want to have this match, and
It was
let
Friday
let
that I posted the article last Friday, June 7th. So pwtorch.com in the AEW news section. Click it, everybody. Read what I wrote, and you can see. But yeah, so it was probably promoting Collision then. But yeah, it just so short answer is because we're at 12 minutes now.
yeah.
We're trying to live to the. We don't want to false advertise. We do every day. We go 13 or 14, but we count plugs and introductions. It's not part of the hot take 12-minute portion in the middle. And I'm sticking with that. But should Tony have tweeted that? Short answer.
It's Tony, so yes, he should always tweet it. Always tweet. Never stop tweeting. We should live in
Wait.
tweets.
Well, no. Okay. If you have stock, if AW is a public company and you had stock in it, would you feel good during TV rights negotiations, Tony tweeting that? And honestly, I mean, I think yes is a legit answer if he feels like he can't compete with WWE by trying to be WWE light or challenger brand. Pepsi is a little sweeter than Coke, and they did the Pepsi challenge in the 80s, and people, when they drink a small portion of cola, like Pepsi better because it was sweeter. Turned out most people when they drank a whole can like Coke better, but Pepsi figured out why people likes Pepsi better. Let's give them a tiny bit and they'll choose us and they'll start buying us. I don't know how that relates to WWE, but when you're a challenger brand, you look for ways to differentiate and get a PR win. To me, I don't. Do you sense this was a PR win? It's just people digging their heels in and getting more loyal to AEW, or do you think it made some people question Tony's wisdom?
To try to answer this in under 30 seconds, to yes to all of that. I think it
Yeah.
was a PR win. I think there is a bit of the Pepsi Coke in that the sweetness are the matches and the matchups without potential storylines. Just I want to see these two. And
Mhm.
the hope is that from that you stay and watch more. Whereas I don't want any of that WWE sports entertaining, blah, blah, blah. I think all of that fit into this, and it's really the modus operandi of AEW. And if this was a publicly traded company, I think there'd be a lot more things I'd want to change before I got to this. But if I knew this was the CEO, I'd be happy with it.
I think if he's confident with his TV rights deal, or he had just signed it, then make that your marketing. If you truly think that's going to work. But I think the tweet that I quoted saying, with attendance down, viewership down, embracing something that might actually be worth reevaluating about your product in order to grow. Because I think there's room for AW to grow by being a little less super serving in that way and cleaning up and improving some other areas that will still please what the sickos like about AW compared to WWE, but you don't have to hang a lantern on it. People will experience it, but I don't know if you want that to be the public branding because I think it does reinforce for people, anecdotally speaking, why a lot of people don't watch AEW because frankly, they do kind of think it's for sickos with some of the blood and gore and violence and high risk moves that wrestlers do. And you can present that and win those people over, but maybe from a marketing standpoint to grow, you don't lead with it. Yeah. All right, cool. We're done with our 12-minute hot take, Rich. Thank you. We're going to move to our VIP podcast recording of Everything with Rich and Wade and spend, whatever, an hour, give or take, talking about a bunch of other issues. So if you are not a VIP member and you want to hear everything that we do, go VIP, the weekly show, Everything with Rich and Wade. You can see the logo on the screen along with a bunch of other logos. We welcome your support and business, pwtorch.com/go VIP. If you're not going to become a member, just subscribe to the PW Torch Daily Cast and the Wade Keller Podcast and Wade Keller Post Shows, the flagship edition of the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast with Jason Paul as my co-host is going up tonight, and I encourage you to check that out. Just search PW Torch. Just search Wade Keller in your podcast app to get the Wade Keller Podcast, and search PW Torch to get a bunch of other free shows too. Lots of ways to consume what we're doing. And we'll talk to you tomorrow night after Dynamite live here on YouTube. Join us in the comment room, send emails. If you're a VIP member, we'll give you a code so you can be on the show with us to ask a question or make a comment. That will be published in our VIP Dynamite report at pwtorchvip.com, perk for VIP members. Thank you, Rich, and we'll talk to you on the other side of this recording.